You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crying in the streets. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
Yeah, time for some conspiracy chat. Yeah,
Before we start, Mike Dell, I just want to say that I'm a human being, goddammit. I just want to get that out there so everybody knows.
All right, very well. Now, a couple weeks ago, we did the JFK assassination.
Yes.
And it was a banner night. But we ran out of time before we covered everything. So there's a few other things I just wanted to mention real quick. Now, Abraham Zapruder and the Zapruder film. Jim Ivino, you know about the Zapruder film, right?
Right. Yeah. Good
film that shows the assassination. But what do you know about Abraham Zapruder, Jim Ivino?
I don't know a whole lot about him. No.
Yeah, really no one does. That seems to be the thing. They just say, oh, Abraham Zapruder, he took the film. But did you know he was a 32-degree Mason?
A what?
Yeah, Mason. 32-degree Mason. Keep an eye on those Masons.
I know Masons, but what's the 32 mean? What's that?
Well, they have degrees of, up the ladder. The higher, the better,
I got a question.
Go ahead, Larry.
I don't know what a Mason is.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Maybe some other day we'll talk about secret societies and all that kind of stuff. But
all right.
The Masons are basically a secret society. Now, not everybody involved in the Masons are shady people. Some of them are just normal, average people. But
you're not talking about bricklayers.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good enough.
But that's where it starts from. All right, but so Abraham Zapruder was a Mason. He also belonged to the Dallas Council on World Affairs and the Crusade for a Free Europe.
Ooh.
Now, that sounds, a lot of people probably don't know what those are, but those were CIA-backed organizations back there in the early 60s in Dallas. And, you're saying, he's probably just an average dude, though. Who else is on this board? Other members of the boards included oil man Clint Murchison. Now, do you know who he is, Larry?
No.
He used to own the Dallas Cowboys.
Really?
Clint Murchison. Yeah. Big oil guy. Also, H.L. Hunt, another big oil dude. He was on the same board. George de Mohrenschildt, who was a CIA contract agent and, oddly enough, the best friend of Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, that's a little weird, right?
Yeah.
Sarah Hughes was also a member of these boards. She was a U.S. lawyer and a federal judge who swore in LBJ on Air Force One following the assassination. Oil tycoon Colonel D. Harold Boyd. And what else did he own, Larry? Any idea what Colonel D. Harold Boyd also owned?
Halliburton.
Boyd Bears.
No, he owned the Texas School Book Depository.
Oh, jeez.
That's a little weird, right?
I see connections.
And also a guy you may have heard of, George Herbert Walker Bush, was also a member of these boards. So that's who Abraham Zapruder is rolling around with there, is these kind of guys. That's kind of weird, right?
Yeah, these are kind of uppity types for a regular guy who just happens to want to just watch a parade. Yeah, now Zapruder's day job was he worked as a fashion designer for the Mardi of Dallas, and he worked side by side with a lady named Jean Legon, Legon, who just happened to be married to Oswald's buddy George de Mohrenschildt. Huh.
Again, weird coincidence.
Yeah, I'll say.
Yeah. And Zapruder had an office in the Dow Tex building across the street from the School Book Depository. And as we learned the last time we talked about this, Larry, there was a team of shooters in the Dow Tex building. Right. And Charles Nicoletti was probably the guy that pulled the trigger and shot Kennedy in the back of the head from the Dow Tex building, third floor of the Dow Tex building. And Zapruder just happened to have an office in that building. It's a little weird again. Yeah. And so it makes you think, well, how did Zapruder know to stand where he stood and to film the things he filmed? And you should also know that when he gave his film to Time Life, And Time Life at the time was owned by Henry Luce, who just happened to be a skull and bonesman from 1920 and a good pal of Prescott Bush.
Another Bush.
Yeah, who would be, George Herbert Walker, his dad. And Prescott Bush was a thief and weasel, and he was actually a Nazi. And what people don't understand is that's how the Bush family got their money, from dealing with the Nazis. He ran the Union Banking Corporation. Look that up. Google that sometime. And you can learn all about the Bush family, how they got their money.
Here's a question I have then. Why would he even film this? Yeah, see, that's the thing. Why would he film the assassination if he was in on it? And they say, some people say, well, they wanted to keep a record of it to just because that's what they like to do, is to see that their enemy was destroyed there, and they wanted to keep a little keepsake of it. That's one theory. The other one say, well, it can prove the assassination was what they said it was. I don't know, but if they're filming it, and there's also evidence that it was doctored and manipulated, well, why did they leave in the back and to the left, But, you think if you're going to edit it up, why leave in the obvious head movement back and to the left? Of course, why take it out when no one seems to care about it anyway? I mean, the visual proof's right there that he wasn't shot in the back of the head, but people still, no one cares. So that's odd. But there's a guy named James Fetzer, I believe, and Jack White, oddly enough. A guy named Jack White. Not the Jack White, a Jack White. Oh, and they contend that this Zapruder film was doctored, and that it's actually just a composite of a bunch of stuff and is edited up like a cartoon. And it is kind of weird when you watch, and they do make some good points. And once again, this is one of those things that people just argue about. Depending on who you listen to, you're going to find one thing to believe or not. But I found it interesting to at least hear the argument, because no one can dispute that there is at least one splice in the film at the beginning. Zapruder's filming the police coming down the Elm Street, and then there's a clear splice, and then the limo just appears. Now, he says he just stopped recording and then started again, but that really, you want to get that effect from that camera that he used there. There would be a focus issue when it resumed filming, and there is none. It's like a clean splice. But it makes no sense. Why would they even show that earlier part then? Why wouldn't they just begin the film with the limo there if they edited it up, So I really don't understand. But one theory is that they had that splice there because that's when the first shots were taken, when they were coming around the corner, and they didn't want to show the first shots. But this Jack White character, he analyzed the film, and he says that everything in the background's been it's been grown like 130%. It's all resized and repositioned. So, and if you watch stuff in the background, there's a lot of funny stuff going on in that film. Like, there's one part where the little kid's standing behind his dad, and then, like, in the next frame, he's out front clapping. And like, there's jumps. You can almost see, like, where there's, edits in the film. So there is some suspicious stuff going on in the film, especially with the shadows and stuff. So it's just something to consider. I never really heard about it until I started looking into it, but... Yeah, just know that this Zapruder film isn't all you think it is. And keep in mind, it wasn't even shown to the public at all until the Clay Shaw trial in 1969. And that's James Garrison there, JFK, Larry, the old Oliver Stone movie. Yeah, Clay Bertrand.
Yeah, so he had to, petition the Supreme Court to get the Zapruder film admitted into the court trial there. And it wasn't shown on public TV until 1975. So there was definitely time for all sorts of alterations to be made. Now, there are other films. We all just know.
Let me just kind of say, like, in the film's defense, this is film back in those days. It's not like it's being recorded on like a DVD Pro tape or anything like that. So it is possible.
I know, but
there are jumps in
these guys are aware of that, Jim. But they break it down frame by frame, and they it's interesting. It's worth reading up on. But there are other films shot that day. A guy named Orville Nix got a film. And I think there's one or two more. And now, once again, depending on who you listen to, some people say they all corroborate each other, and then some say no, there are clear differences in the films. So I don't know. But it's another avenue to explore if you're interested in the JFK assassination, whether or not this Zapruder film can even be believed at all.
I'm watching it right now.
Yeah, because the first thing you notice about this Zapruder film is when you see the headshot, is the front of his head just explodes out. There's like this big fake-looking blob on his face.
Yeah.
And it looks very fake. And you know what else makes it look fake is the autopsy photos, because they don't match that wound. So something's either wrong. Either the film's wrong or the autopsy. You don't even want to know what happened to Kennedy's body after they got to the hospital. Basically, the CIA came in and took the body, and the guy who, the mortician there who put it in the casket to be shipped out, he says he put it in one kind of casket, and then when it arrived off the plane in D.C., it was in a different kind of casket. So,
right.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence that the body was switched and manipulated, and that surgery was performed on the head en route to doctor up some of the wounds. And so, yeah, it's really shady business. Just once again, just look into it. It's shocking, the stuff you'll find. But another thing I want to talk about, have you ever heard of the 3 tramps, Larry? The 3 tramps?
The hobos?
Yeah. Was that in the JFK movie?
Yeah. And they talked about how these guys were supposed to be bums, but they all had, like, new clothes, and, they didn't really look like transients.
Yeah, but it was behind the railroad tracks, behind the grassy knoll, the fence there. They found 3 guys holed up in a railroad car, and they just the cops arrested them, and they just became known as the 3 tramps. And over the years, lots of people have had all kind of theories about who those guys were, their identities, and it's ranged throughout the years. One of the predominant theories nowadays is that the 3 guys were actually guys named Charles Rogers, Chauncey Holt, and Charles Harrelson. And that Charles Harrison would be Woody Harrelson's dad.
Really?
Yeah, because Woody Harrelson's dad was a contract killer for the, I don't know, for the mob or the CIA, but and he was actually in jail. I don't know if he's still alive, but he was in jail for killing a judge. And when he was in jail, he admitted that, he said that was him, that he was there. But there's still disputes over who exactly the 3 tramps were, but it's pretty clear that they weren't tramps. And even the photos of the day of them being arrested, the police are walking them to the jail cell there, but they're not in handcuffs. They're not even standing next to them. There's a great distance between them, and the tramps are, like, smiling. And they weren't even fingerprinted or photographed. They were basically led in the front door and just let out the back door. So something was going on, who those guys were. One theory is that they were a team, either they were a shooting team that didn't shoot, like they were a backup team, or they were there with working, helping guys out, helping out the shooters. I don't know. But that's another interesting aspect of the conspiracy. And one final thing I want to talk about, either of you guys ever heard of the Umbrella Man or the Dark-Complected Man?
Yeah.
The shadowy guy behind the fence, is that what you're referring to?
No, that they call that guy Badge Man a lot. Because whether or not he ever existed, that's up for debate as well. But if you watch the Zapruder film, and if you look at the bottom of the film there, right when they come out from, there's a sign that blocks the view, and then if you look at the bottom of the screen there, right when they get past the sign, you can see a guy holding an umbrella. And it is a bright sunny day, not a cloud in the sky. And this guy has an umbrella. Yeah, you see him there?
Yeah.
You just barely make out the top of the umbrella. And this guy's standing there with an umbrella. It's opened, and he raises it up and then lowers it. You can't really see that on the film, but so he raises it up and lowers it, and people are like, "What is that about?" And standing next to him is just a guy that they call the Dark-Complected Man. And if you and this guy raises his right arm, waves, and makes a fist right as the limo is going by. So people say, and after the shootings, while everyone else was running to the grassy knoll, because once again, everybody in Dealey Plaza heard shots coming from the grassy knoll, so that's why they all ran there. The Umbrella Man and the Dark-Complected Man sat down next to each other on the curb, and they just sat there and waited. And the Dark-Complected Man pulled out a radio from his back pocket, and he's talking to someone there. Then they stand up, and they walk away in opposite directions. And there's, once again, photos of the Dark-Complected Man putting the radio back into his pocket and in his back of his pants there. And once again, there are photos of these guys. And just do a search for Umbrella Man, JFK Assassination, Dark-Complected Man, whatever, and you'll find the photos. If you need proof of something going on there, I don't know what more it is than just seeing these dudes and how they behaved that day. Something was up,
Something was definitely up. I'm watching all this now. I never noticed, like, the umbrella guy, or now I see the guy with the right hand up in the air and the fist.
Yeah, and one theory is that they were spotters for the shooters. Someone else suggested that they were signaling the driver. And once again, that's another, I don't even know if we talked about that in the first time, but the the Secret Service and how they acted that day was shameful. The driver, if you once again watch the Zapruder film, I'm blanking on the driver's name. I think Greer was his name. Watch what happens when Kennedy gets shot. He slows down the limousine. He slows it down, almost brings it to a complete stop, and he just stares behind him. He looks over his shoulder, and he's just staring at Kennedy. And then the minute his head gets, explodes with that headshot, then he steps on the gas and floors it, and they take off. Now, that's obviously not proper, conduct for a driver in a presidential limousine when the shots are being fired to stop the limo. And eyewitnesses on the day said it came to a complete stop. But in the Zapruder film, it kind of just slows and then goes. So that's another reason why they think there's places in the film maybe to hide the fact that it did stop. And a lot of the actions in the limo, Connolly and his wife and even Jackie, their movements are real jerky and almost like frames are missing. But, yeah, watch the limo driver because he's the key. Now, a lot of people are saying there's one bogus conspiracy theory out there that the limo driver had a gun and he shot Kennedy. No, that's not true at all. But just watch how he behaves, and that's really all the proof you need. And the guy in the passenger seat is a guy named Kellerman, I believe, and he's also Secret Service. And he doesn't do anything. He just stands there and stares straight ahead. And why does he stare straight ahead? Because he knows the shot's coming from the front. He doesn't want to get hit. I mean, it's his job to jump on the president there and cover him up, but neither one of them did anything. And also, there's another great video on YouTube. Google JFK Secret Service stand down, and you'll come to a little video when they're getting out of the airport there. You can see in the back of the limo there are little bars and platforms where the Secret Service agents are supposed to stand. But as the guys are getting in position to do that, a guy named Emery Roberts, who is leading the Secret Service detail there, stands up in the trail car and waves the agents off. And he tells them to get away from the car. And the agents turn around and look at him. They throw their hands up in the air, and they're very upset. And they're like, what are you doing? We're supposed to be here. And he waves them back, and so the limo proceeds without the Secret Service agents on the back of the car. Now, why couldn't they be on the back? Because, they knew Kennedy was going to get shot. And they didn't want them getting in the line of fire and blocking the shot. There's also supposed to be police motorcycles on the sides of the limo, and they called them back, too. So they just let them into the slaughter there,
This is, this is weird stuff, Mike Dell.
Yeah.
Very weird stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy. So now, Jim Ivino, do you know anything about Robert Kennedy's assassination?
Well, he was just getting done with a speech, if I remember correctly.
Well, he just ended his speech. He had just won the California primary.
Yeah, and he goes down off the stage, and someone comes up. He just turns around, and then someone shoots him there on the stage.
Not quite. But, he was giving a victory speech because he won the Democratic primary. And this was in the early hours of June 5th. Primary was on June 4th. He beat Eugene McCarthy, and it looked like he was going to be the Democratic nominee for president. And McCarthy still had the electoral or the delegate lead, but the way things worked back then, it was a little different. And it looked like Kennedy, that he won California, he was going to win the nomination, and he was going to be the Democratic nominee for president. So he was giving his victory speech there on early hours of June 5th at the Embassy Ballroom at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. He just concluded. He walked off stage, and someone told him to take a shortcut through the kitchen. Like the route he was supposed to leave from the stage was not through the kitchen. There's still a debate over who it was that directed him back through the kitchen, but the route was changed. He went back through this crowded hallway back towards the kitchen, and a guy named Sirhan Sirhan, a 24-year-old Palestinian-American, walked up to him and fired 8 shots at Robert Kennedy and killed him. And that's the story. But is that true, Larry? I
always thought that was true, but you told me otherwise, so I believe you, Mike Dell.
Yeah, that's not what happened at all. Kennedy was shot, like the official story, that's the official story. Sirhan came out, shot him, and Sirhan's gun held 8 shots. And they say he emptied all 8 shots. 3 hit Kennedy, and 5 bystanders were also wounded. So all 8 bullets were counted, and no person was hit by the same bullet. So that's at least 8 bullets right there. But Kennedy also had a shot go through the shoulder of his suit coat harmlessly and just pass through harmlessly there. And for the official story to work, they say, well, that bullet probably ricocheted off the ceiling and came back and hit somebody. Yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. But so even if you buy that, there's a few problems with the story. One is every eyewitness at the scene says that Sirhan came from the front of Robert Kennedy, and he got nowhere closer than 1.5 to 3 feet. That was as close as he ever got to him, and when he pulled the trigger to shoot him. And the problem is Kennedy's wounds were in his back. He had 2 shots in the ribs, in the back side of the ribs there, and the kill shot was behind his right ear. And there were powder burns behind his right ear, indicating the barrel was no more than an inch away when it was fired. You know, so Sirhan could not have shot him. Now, a lot of people say, well, Kennedy was turning to his right to shake someone's hand, and that's when, but it still would have shot him from the side, not from behind. He wouldn't have got him behind the ear. And once again, every eyewitness there testified and said, no, Sirhan never got close enough to shoot him. But the government just came in and said, no, you got the story wrong. You don't remember it right, you know, and it's just shameful. There are also, the other problem is there were photographs that showed bullet holes in the door jamb behind Kennedy, and also ceiling tiles had bullet holes in them. And, of course, the LAPD came in and they removed the door frame and the ceiling tiles, and that evidence was destroyed. And so that would have been more than 8 bullets to prove that there were 2 shooters. But the big thing that proves something fishy was going on is there was an independent journalist named Stanislav Brzezinski who accidentally recorded the shooting. And there's actually video of this, too, where you can see Stanislav goes up there to the podium to retrieve his tape recorder. He picks it up, and he forgets to turn it off because he just wants to get off stage and, you know, follow Kennedy there. So he walks down in the hall, and here his recorder's still on, and he records the shooting. And you can hear this tape on YouTube or whatever. And when I listen to it, I can pretty much hear more than 8 shots. But just with my, you know, just listening to it. But acoustic forensic experts Martin Van Praag and Robert Joling, they bust out the modern equipment, you know, like they can break down audio now, kind of like we do every week with the Audacity.
Around
right,
Blog Talk? Oh, yeah, that too.
Yeah, when we do the Around Blog Talk. And they analyzed the audio tape, and they found that there were 13 shots fired. Yeah. And
wow.
Once again, Sirhan's gun only holds 8 shots. So that's a problem. And they find that also when they analyze the frequencies and whatnot, that 8 came from one gun and 5 came from another. And that also supports early forensic evidence of the scene of the crime, actually, that there was talk that there was different bullets coming from different people out of the victims. So that's your proof right there that something happened, you know, there was a conspiracy afoot. So if Sirhan didn't shoot him, Larry, who did?
George Herbert Walker?
No. Okay. But this would be one of the few times in our history that Bush wasn't involved. And he probably was involved because the CIA is responsible for killing Robert Kennedy as well. And Herbert Walker was involved in the CIA back then. But, yeah, probably by all accounts it was a guy named Thane Eugene Caesar.
No.
Now, he was Thane Eugene Caesar. Now, he was a 26-year-old part-time security guard for Ace Security, and he was there that night. He'd only worked a couple times for Ace Security. But his day job, oddly enough, was at Lockheed Martin in Burbank. Now, Lockheed Martin, they do a lot of stuff for the government, and the CIA operated, and they were developing the U-2 and spy planes and stuff at this facility, and he just happened to work there during the day. That's odd, right?
Yeah.
But on this night, he was Kennedy's bodyguard, and he was actually escorting Robert Kennedy off the stage. He was holding onto his right elbow there and just walking behind him, and he led him into the passageway where Sirhan was waiting. And in all the commotion, it's believed Eugene Caesar there, he took the gun out and just shot Kennedy. And he would have been in perfect position to do it. And the wounds to Kennedy's head and ribs were shot upwards, at an upwards trajectory, which is perfect position once again for Caesar standing there and pull his gun out and bang, shoot him up. So, and it was also, he also owned a .22 caliber H&R Model 922 revolver, but he told the police that he sold the gun before the assassination, that he didn't have it with him that night because he had sold it. Well, he lied about that. He actually sold the gun 3 months after the assassination. And when people tracked down the gun to the guy who he had sold it to, and they went to retrieve it, oddly enough, the gun was stolen before they could, catch up to it. Now, I believe that just in recent years, the gun was found in a Louisiana swamp, and the FBI tried to run tests to see if they could prove that it was involved with Kennedy's killing, and the tests were inconclusive.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, but Thane Eugene Caesar, I believe, is still alive and living in the Philippines. But yeah, so he's probably the guy that pulled the trigger, just because he was right there in the position. He owned the gun. Now Sirhan, the big theory is that he was just a mind-controlled Manchurian candidate. Did you ever see that movie, Larry?
No, I never did.
Yeah, it's a beauty. 1962, Frank Sinatra and John Frankenheimer directed it there. And Frankenheimer was actually a good friend of Robert Kennedy, and Frankenheimer drove Kennedy to the Ambassador Hotel the night of his assassination. So that's odd. But Manchurian Candidate's basically about a guy who's hypnotized and mind-controlled and to assassinate, I believe, a congressman or a senator or something. But yeah, it's a good flick. And so the big theory is that Sirhan was just one of these Manchurian Candidate dudes who was hypnotized. Now, Jim Ivino, are you still with us?
Yeah.
Did you ever hear of something called MK Ultra?
MK Ultra?
Yeah, MK Ultra.
No, I don't think I've heard that one.
Well, that's a program the CIA ran in the 1950s and 60s where they did experiments on people where they tried to, hypnotize them and mind. They gave them LSD and stuff, and they basically it was brainwashing and mind control.
Oh, that's why I don't remember it.
Yeah, that's right. So one theory is that Sirhan was just one of these MK Ultra patients programmed to kill Robert Kennedy. And he had a journal there. They found a journal in his house where with all these weird writings and all kind of nonsensical stuff. But in his pages he'd have RFK must die, RFK must die, over and over. And there's also occult symbolism in there and stuff. So another theory is that some group of occultists got a hold of him and somehow programmed him. There's all kinds of things out there. But Sirhan, he still says he has no memory of shooting Kennedy. He can remember up to a certain point, but he still has no memory of the assassination. And another thing, people that night said that they saw a girl in a polka dot dress talking to Sirhan throughout the evening. She had a white dress, black polka dots. And afterwards, the same woman was seen running out of the ballroom saying, "We shot him, we shot him." And she was very happy.
Really?
Yeah. Now, when the witnesses reported this, the police called him in, and they leaned on him. And they kept interrogating him for 2 days until the one lady would recount her story. And she was a 21-year-old campaign, volunteer. And so she did just say, "All right, you're right, I had it wrong, I don't recall that." But then afterwards, she got out years later, she says, "No, they forced me to say that." And so just another interesting little tidbit about the assassination.
Wait, say it again? Who forced her to say that?
The LAPD. Because the LAPD corruption, it's fascinating the amount of corruption in all the police and CIA and everything. But there were two old CIA dudes who were working with the LAPD running the investigation, and they just leaned on her and every witness there and told them, "No, you're remembering wrong. This isn't right." And yeah, so that's how they worked back then. But another part of the LAPD corruption, there was a teenage kid named Scott Einhart in the kitchen there. He I don't know, he was working for his little school newspaper or something, or he was just there, and he was a photographer, so he was taking pictures, and he happened to be in there when the assassination took place, and he took a roll of film there, at least 10 pictures of the assassination happening, and he was standing behind Kennedy and to the left, and right away the police confiscated his film, and they said, "Hey, that's evidence, we need that." So the little kid gave him the film there, and they sealed it as evidence for 20 years. And but in 1988, Scott Einhart, he said, "Hey, I want my film back." He hadn't forgotten about it, so they gave him his film. But there was a roll missing with 10 photos taken in the pantry were missing. That's odd, right? So he says, "Well, I still want my film back," and he was going to take him to court. And the LAPD said, "All right, we'll give it back," because at first they said they lost it, and they're like, "All right, we'll give it back to you." But here, strangely enough, on the day they're supposed to return the film, it got stolen from the delivery car. That's weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the car was in the police parking lot there, and someone broke into it and stole the film. That's crazy. So Einar still took him to court, and he won his case, and he won $450,000 from him, the LAPD. So, yeah.
Now, why Bobby Kennedy?
Well, because they didn't want another Kennedy in the White House. And Kennedy, he said he was going to expose the CIA again in what they did to his brother, and he wanted us out of Vietnam War. He'd been at odds with LBJ over the Vietnam War. But basically, they didn't want a Kennedy in the White House. If you need proof that the Kennedys were rubbed out, just think of the three Kennedy brothers there. You had Jack, you had Bobby, and you had Teddy. Now, which two guys stood up for things? You know, Jack and Bobby, and they're dead. And which guy's the drunken weasel who just goes along with anybody? And that's Teddy, and he's still alive. It's funny how
barely.
Yeah, but he's the guy who's allowed to live because he played the game, you know. But Bobby and Jack stood up and actually went against things, and they're rubbed out. But it's all because they wanted to keep their guys in power, LBJ and then Nixon, and there's a big chain of command. They wanted to, because if they don't kill Jack and Bobby, that's 16 years of Kennedys in the White House probably, and then they just couldn't have it, so they just rubbed them up.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's good stuff, Mike. Though.
Yeah. Yes, but the key point is Sirhan's gun held 8 shots. There's audio proof that more than 8 shots were taken. There's even physical proof of bullet holes in the door and the ceiling and the victims that more than 8 shots were taken. It's just nonsense to argue that it's not a conspiracy. There were 2 shooters.
Huh. Just like JFK, at least.
Yes, at least. Some people say Sirhan couldn't even have shot all 8 out of his gun, or maybe he was firing blanks. Because George Plimpton and Rosie Greer, we were talking about the fearsome foursome earlier. Rosie Greer, the old L.A. Rams defensive lineman, he was working security detail for Kennedy, and they say that they grabbed Sirhan before he could have fired all 8 shots. So who knows if there was even another shooter there. But the important thing is more than one shooter was there. And
You're telling me Rosie Greer was working security?
Yeah. For Bobby Kennedy. George Plimpton, the writer there, he was there too. Not as security, but he was just palling around. And
George Plimpton.
And they were one of the first 2 guys to grab Sirhan and get the gun off him.
Wow.
Yep.
That's good stuff, Mike Dell. You really dig deep into these.
Well, that's nothing. It's very complicated, but if it interests you, please investigate and research it on your own.